whole story.
Wakey, wakey, it is the 22nd of February 2022. You're back on time for Morning Prime. Today is Siasa Fiesta. And of course, we take a keen look on what has been happening on the week that has been heightened political, of course, rhetoric on the ground, campaign trails, holding up also on the ground as well. People are whistle stopping and, of course, also moving with their taglines, moving with their slogans on the ground, all in a bid to lure the voters. Looking at the clock, of course, that particular hand of time is ticking towards a general election 2022, and everyone is trying to put their ducks in a row to make sure they are all prepared as far as 2022 is concerned. IBC, ESCC, the judiciary as well. We know yesterday Chief Justice Martha Koome also has embarked on training judicial officers on how they can handle election petitions in 2022. But also primarily Kenyans are suffering. They are decrying the high cost of living, as it were, saying now this is not a reflection of, a good leadership in the country. What does it really portend for the electorate? That also this year they are looking at some of the promissory notes that are being put on the table from the politicians as well. We shall be looking at this with our panelists this morning. We have with us this morning Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, who is the Senator of Kericho. Also we have Dan Mazo, Member of Parliament Makueni. We'll be joined also much later by Dr. Senior Counsel Lotenda Molo to continue with the conversation. But you drive the show with me every day. And you can hit me on Twitter at Dibalane is my Twitter handle. Also at KTN KE News. That is KTN News KE is a Twitter handle. And all your thoughts, you can actually hang them or tag them on Morning Prime so that we can actually sample some of them in the course of the program. Right, so let me just give introductory remarks to our panelists already who are here. We had Senator Aaron Cheruiyot coming, as usual, very early. Right, he's a timekeeper. I've noted that. So I wonder if he was a prefect in school. Right, and Dan Mazo today he has tried. Right, he's beat Lotenda Molo to the punch, really coming up early as well. Thank you so very much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Right.
Thank you, Dibal.
Asante sana. Of course, now you have your Kericho tea there to warm you up. I'll serve Dan Mazo with Kericho tea as well.
Yes.
Right, or what do you fancy?
Yes, Kericho tea. It's good.
Or you take it alongside with the modokoi in the morning?
Yes, quite a lot of time.
I'll go to my kitchen.
Right,
the small kiosk here. Yeah.
Yes.
But good to see you nonetheless. Thank you so very much. At least now we can take the paper review together. But I just want to give you a chance to tell us how it's been. I know, Senator, first of all, Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, beside the politics, I saw you with the Senate committee in Eastleigh, trying to salvage some of the lands that are being grabbed there. And what I failed to understand is the fact that we hear that this is primarily under the nose of NMS.
Yeah.
Is that true?
It's a very sad story, and maybe it's something that that will shock actually the nation back to its consciousness. I know there are many evil things that happen in Kenya, but this is one particular disturbing story because it basically what we did as a committee on devolution, we were responding to a statement that had been sought from us by nominated Senator Millicent Omanga, bringing to the attention of the Senate that there are 2 or 3 parcels of land that have all been grabbed mafia style. And it involved a very intricate web that involves the police, rogue land officials at Nairobi City County offices.
Even after digitizing, you
Yeah,
know,
and,
all the
NMS. And basically what happens is that when they target a particular parcel of land, they come up and put up a notice and say this is a police, this land belongs to the police. And in between the dispute, one day they just show up at night and they kick out everybody. And of course the citizens will not really be aggrieved towards this, because the debate will be, you know, if it's police, it's government. But actually the truth of the matter is that it turns out in a few weeks or months that it's not actually the police, but land grabbers who are using police officers, because the land that you saw us in Eastleigh is a land that belonged to Nairobi Water Company, you know, Water and Sewerage Company. Employees of that company used to live there, I think, from the year 2000. These were houses that were built by the World Bank to house employees of Nairobi City Water Company.
Yes.
It used to be a bigger parcel of land, because we were later shown and told that actually even the high-rise buildings that you were seeing in that particular place are parcels of that land that were grabbed in small bits. Therefore, this final one was a final kick, actually, of what used to be land that belonged to Nairobi City Water.
Yes.
And it is land that was grabbed mafia style. People just received notice while they were still counter-checking. Of course, the officials, including the CEO of Nairobi City Water, were threatened and told, what is yours that you want to claim there? Because you know Nairobi City Water, under the transition authority, surrendered all its assets to Nairobi City County, because that's under the arm of a county government. So the titles are actually with the Nairobi City County. How they changed hand from that particular owner to the private developer who wants to put up the apartments that are there is something that as a committee will
who's the private developer?
Is it to there are rumors that there are some are staff of the county government of Nairobi, and they're powerful individuals, including what is it called, some members of a county assembly that are involved in this, because they were all mentioned and the people knew them. You know, a little bit further down, if you're familiar with the geography of Eastleigh,
I am
you
familiar.
Move to.
I grew up actually in Eastleigh.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So you moved down the road to Pumwani.
I was born in Pumwani.
Yes.
Myself.
So now, people like you who are born in Pumwani should be very passionate about this, because what has happened in Pumwani is that all doctors' houses, you'd remember that this was a well-planned, you know, Nairobi was properly planned.
Yes.
It's only us who've later on come to mess it up. So all the major or the main doctors actually, given that you understand a maternity works 24 hours, sometimes there's need for a doctor to be called back if there's an emergency with a patient and that kind. So there are a number of housing units that belong to the doctors. Unfortunately, first of all, those houses have been run down. They're in a dilapidated condition. But now, to add insult to injury, those houses have finally been grabbed by private developers. And slowly by slowly, if you move in, you'll see that there are people who are pretending to run garages, but they're just a face for people who have already bought off those properties. There's even a petrol station that has been put up by a private developer or land grabber. You know, and the people that are being mentioned are fairly powerful in the country, people who you'd expect that they'd use their positions to safeguard. You know, what you'd be expecting is that the county should be renovating these houses. And the beauty is that they are fairly prime and big parcels of land, as such that if the county was to set aside a few, couple of 100 millions, they'd build high-rise apartments where a majority of those doctors and nurses can actually live. And it's on big land. Unfortunately, that has also been grabbed, the entire length of what used to be the doctors' houses. And I plead with people of goodwill, especially even because media plays an important role, to continue highlighting this story. Every time you see Governor Anne Kananu, let her be put to question. Every time you see the DCI, let them answer to this. every time you see the IG,
yes,
because the police are being mentioned in a big way as being, especially the OCPD for Buruburu and the OCPD for Pumwani and Isili, that on many occasions they are part of, they accompany actually these land grabbers to come and pull this repossession exercise. Of course, the hospital, without the goodwill and the support of the local leadership, then they would make any particular headway. The people who are running for governor of Nairobi, I want to see them make a public pledge that they will repossess all the doctors' houses of Pumwani,
yes,
and actually build decent houses for the doctors and nurses of Pumwani who can live there, because there's sufficient land and the money is there to be able to put up a good and decent housing. So basically that's what we are going to do in Pumwani and Isli.
Thank you. Right, good to know what is happening so far, and of course we'll be putting tails on that particular developing story to know who are the culprits. You mentioned some of the county assemblies members who are trying to grab the land, working in cohorts with the, of course, officials from the Ministry of Land. Even after digitizing the land register, of course, this is happening despite the fact that we know we were trying to streamline that particular sector so that we try and stamp the flow of corruption. But let's hear from Dan Mazo. Good to see you.
Yes, good
Leo
to see
Koti.
Yes, you know, we are in Mombasa, and then I'm going to Kambani today, and then later on to Parliament. You know, we have a sitting.
Yes.
This afternoon.
Yes.
So I like what the Honorable Cheriot is saying, and what Senate is doing about land grabbing, especially of a very important hospital in this country. You know, this land grabbing issue has to be relooked at, because it's actually a criminal act.
Yes.
You know, whereby somebody takes advantage of public land and public utility. You know how important an hospital is, and if doctors are not near the hospital eventually, even the hospital itself will be grabbed or will be ineffective or will not serve its official purpose.
Yes.
So I believe Senate should do its best, and the government should support any action to recover,
yes,
you know, land which has been grabbed within the city, and let it be put in its rightful place. Yes.
Thank you very much.
There's something I forgot to value. That's about NMS.
Yes, NMS.
And where they come in all this. You know, land registry is one of the transferred functions that Governor Sonko and now Governor Kananu signed, that the county transfers to NMS. And therefore, it's unfortunate that for an institution that was hyped and we were told that is coming to make services better, they are actually being accused as being key perpetrators of this land grabbing mess. Because when we spoke to the citizens of former employees of Nairobi City Water Company who were kicked out, they said actually the goons that came to kick them out of their houses, they came in NMS lorries.
Oh, really?
You know, and that's really unfortunate. And you know, we have tried to get General Badi to appear before our committee for the last 3 months. We haven't been successful. We finally issued summons
so all
yesterday.
All the figures are pointing towards General Badi as well?
Yes, because he's a head of NMS. He has to come and put an account of his officers. Who are these officers that are conniving with land grabbers to take away public land? Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, I want to introduce to you as well Dr. Otenda Molo, who is the Senior Counsel, also Member of Parliament, Rarieda. Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for joining us on Morning Prime. We just joined while we were still giving our introductory remarks, and then we buckled down to a paper review. Right, for you as well, it's been a very crazy week last week. Of course, from here you are headed to the Anniversary Towers IBC offices as well. But we can see another development that is happening so far. Sabina Chege is suing IBC. How things are turning, the tables are turning. Why the tables are turning? And I am assuming or writing under the assumption that this is a council that has come from, you know, the two senior councils, you and James Orengo.
Thank you. Thank you, Dibal. It's good to be here again this week. Yes, we're in a political season, so there's bound to be drama all over. I think the more heightened one is not so much the issue of Sabina Chege, Mheshimiwa, but it's the movement of the various formations,
but of course,
especially around the coastal region and elsewhere. But on the issue of Honorable Sabina Chege, as I indicated last time,
yes,
we were bound to raise some issues, which we did. I must say, first of all, that the IBC was courteous, you know, and I think professional in how they handled the preliminary bits. They did not agree with us, and obviously, therefore, we would take the other available options. And one of the options is always to test whether their interpretation of the law accords with the interpretation that the High Court would give it. Because we believe firmly that there are certain procedural issues that they floated and which makes the whole issue, you know, improper. Mm-hmm. And this is important because the IBC, given part of its mandate, is bound to walk this path in this season.
Yes.
So it is important that even we help them, you know, chart it clearly and properly within the law. Otherwise, they might get it wrong with various other people, and that would be unfortunate. So yes, we are bound to appear again before them today, and of course, there's also the High Court matter.
Okay.
And I will leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that as well, because as you say, this is a sub judice, as it were, matters in court. But yes, let's now get to see what is fresh off the press this morning. Together with our panelists, we begin with the Standard, and this is what is headlining the front page of the Standard today. Sagana talks turning point for Raila Ruto. If President reveals what caused fallout with his deputy, he could swing a large part of Mount Kenya to shift alliances, especially if he signals revival of his party. Tomorrow's meeting is critical, coming just days before Jubilee and ODM delegates conferences expected to endorse Raila for State House. This story is tucked away on page 6 of the Standard today. Also, you can see on top there, the Sabina suing IBC. What Otiende has been talking about here is headed, of course, there after the show. Sabina sues to stop IBC probe on rigging claim. That story on page 16 of the Standard today. Also, fear rules in ghost town of Samburu. Found out what fear is all about and why it's looming in Samburu. Also, state owing suppliers 468 billion shillings. Remember, this is even after there was, of course, an advice or yes, a pronouncement that all pending bills should be settled. Still, we have 468 billion shillings that the suppliers are owned by the government. Livondo claims he has given evidence to DCI. Politician maintains comments on attempts on President life was correct or were correct. Says he has given investigators names of people involved in the plot. And this story continues on page 8 of the Standard today. We look at that briefly, of course, not really delving deeper because all this is a matter of conjecture until the investigation, of course, is well carried out by the DCI. Where is it headed? Kenyans sue or use social media to demand lower food prices. High cost of living kicks up a storm as data shows prices of basic food items have been increasing in the last 12 months with no action taken by politicians who are too busy campaigning. Situation is worsened by bad weather that has affected farming, and that story is well fleshed out for you on page 4 of the Standard today. This is how it looks for you. Make sure you grab a copy of the Standard. Allow me to show you what we have on also the front page of the Daily Nation, and it's just coming up momentarily for you. Acting up a bit. The Star is up. I'll show you the Daily Nation much later. This is the Star for you. Uhuru plan to drive Ruto out of Central. That is what is headlining the front page of the Star. Uhuru plan to drive Ruto out of Central. Jubilee grassroots meetings christened Red Army activated as Uhuru heads to Sagana. This story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. Jubilee grassroots meetings christened Red Army activated as Uhuru heads to Sagana. You have the story on page 4 and 5. Kenyans groan under high cost of living. This story, you know it. So far, this was what was trending on Twitter yesterday, and the story is tucked away on page 11 of the Star today. And these are the prices right now that people are decrying. Where are we headed to? You know, you have that 2 kilogram, a packet of maize flour now retailing at 124 from 112. You have rice 5 kg. It was 1,118. Now it is 1,212. Bread that you're taking this morning was 50 shillings. 5 shillings more on top of it. You can see also sugar, 260. 10 shillings more on top. We have it at 270. You have also 50 shillings of a packet of milk, now going for 53 shillings. And now also cooking oil, it is 930 from 870. And look at that Kenyan there who is saddled with all this burden of carrying this high cost of living. Inflation is a reality. We know even in the US it has hit at now at almost 40%. This is historic also in that particular country. And also we are being beaten by this. But is this the reality on the ground? Should we peg inflation to the high cost of living? People have different, of course, opinion coming to the floor of course, to the floor, I should say, not the floor of the house. But I want just to hear from our panelists. Looking at this, you need to tell us what is really happening so far. Now, bread is becoming unaffordable. Unga, that of course, is a staple food for Kenyans, is 124. Where are we headed to? Where don't you what?
This is it's a very sad story. For many maybe who are active online.
Yes.
Or those of us, let me speak about those of us in the political class. This is just a conversation that perhaps maybe we can use to tout each other on the campaign and say, oh, you are the ones responsible or the other ones. Unfortunately, this is one such incident where none of us can claim exclusive, what is it called? Exclusive separation from the mess that is in our food sector. This is a problem that we've had for quite some time, where food prices have been going up and putting it above the reach of many citizens of this country, where they cannot afford a basic meal. Forget about 3 meals a day, even just one for a single day.
Yes.
And many are not able to eat a stable meal daily because of the emerging cost. And it boils down to the issue of cost of input, which is something that we've refused to heed to over the years because of the cost of the fertilizer and what it takes to put together many of what Kenyans would consider to be ordinary meals. The price keeps on rising. If you speak to the people, the vegetable vendors who bring our vegetables to the city very early in the morning, they'll tell you, one, the cost of fuel to transport it from many of the outer parts of Nairobi and bring that food here is quite high. Number two, the farmer who sells it to them, because many of them are just middlemen between us and the farmer, is that the farmer has also increased their price because farm inputs are extremely high. And it's something that is within our control. Maybe we need to either zero rate or make it even a bit more affordable, perhaps subsidize it to our farmers so that we bring down at least the cost of the very basic food items. It's common sense now that it's easier to farm in the rest of the East African countries, and Kenya is the most expensive. If you go to Namanga border post, and my good friend Otiende here knows because we were with him in Arusha over December during the East African Parliamentary Games, is that he'll tell you that as you drive out of Kenya, there's hardly anything leaving the country headed into Tanzania. But driving in from Tanzania, you'll find hundreds of lorries every single day bringing in tomatoes, onions, carrot, and even vegetables, because it's easier to farm on the other side of the border in Tanzania and come and sell in Kenya because they have basically subsidized their cost of fertilizer and other farm inputs, which is a pledge that we need to get for many of these presidential candidates. All of them need to speak to the country about what is their food Marshall Plan, and I take special pride because I have seen what my side of the coalition is proposing, that on agricultural products, that we shall actually run a food subsidy program to enable our farmers be able to buy farm inputs at a lower rate. You've heard us speak about fertilizer, for example, that the cost that it is retailing at, which is about 6,000 Kenyan shillings right now, the different types on average, is it's not tenable for many of our farmers. Most of them, first of all, cannot afford it, but even those that can afford it, then they pass on the cost to the average consumer.
Thank you.
So that remains to be a challenge.
All right, so you're meeting in Parliament today, right? Resumption of Parliament. What are you planning to do about this particular situation?
Well, you know, this is the budgetary season, and Parliament is preparing the budget, and also supplementary budget is underway. So it is at times, you know, under the Finance Act, this is where you can be able to regulate the taxes. But everyone is aware that there has been, you know, COVID, which has affected the whole world, and economies of the world are affected, not only Kenya. We're looking at a plan whereby there must be post-COVID recovery. And one of the best things which can be done is small businesses have to be encouraged through the taxation and tax waivers, so that small businesses can peak, and that the country have a definite policy and plan on how to recover from the COVID losses. Because for a long time, you know, the economy stalled during the lockdowns, and this is why we're having what we're having now. And there's every likelihood that unless it is well managed, then Kenyans are going to suffer more. So it is up to government. And remember, one of the biggest problems is the fuel. You know, the moment petrol and fuel is high, then everything else tends to go high. And remember, this is largely because of taxes. And I believe in the finance bill this time, that matter is going to be managed. One of the complaints has been lack of public participation when setting the fuel prices. And there has been a petition now brought in Parliament, which is being considered so that fuel prices can be regulated. Yes.
What petition is this?
There's a petition presented by consumers last week, a Consumer Federation.
Consumer Federation of Kenya.
Human rights, you know, organization, which is dealing with you know, consumers and the consumer products in the country. Now that they have presented the petition as being considered in the House, they have asked that there be public participation, which is a constitutional requirement when setting up oil prices. Yes.
Thank you very much. Otieno Amolo, you want to react on this as well, the high cost of living, briefly, as we continue with the paper review?
Well, yes. Just to start from where Honorable Mans has left, even before the petition, you remember the better part of last year towards the end, we as members of Parliament embarked through the committee on a mission to try and reduce the fuel prices.
Yes.
And I think it's also repeated somewhere in the papers. And that is something that is still on, because as Aaron Cheruiyot correctly observes, part of what drives prices of commodities is the price of the cost of transportation. So by reducing the fuel prices, you start to reduce that which contributes to the high cost of the product in terms of sale. But I think the starting point, and I agree with Aaron Cheruiyot on this, is that this is a matter that, it's not a matter that requires cheap populism. Cheap populism, for example, is what I see on page 5 of the Standard, where, the so-called Kenya Kwanza principles are allegedly blaming the handshake for the high cost of pricing. I think that is laughable, and that's a misdirection. It's ironical that those who are speaking, like my friend Musale Mudavadi here, my friend Moses Wetangula, at all material time were on our side of the coalition when the handshake was happening, even after the handshake, and they supported it. Now, how can you then come and stand in public in good conscience and say the prices are going up because of the handshake? You know, that's cheap populism. What we require is a focused approach. And that approach will not be achieved by, standing and saying, oh, now we have the solution. That after 9 years, you have suddenly woken up to a solution to the rising cost of commodities. That right now, after 9 years, you've just woken up to realize that the debt ceiling is too high. When at all material time, at all other times, even when the debate was brought to Parliament and all, we would always oppose it, and because of the so-called numbers then, it would always pass. The truth is that we must look at measures that can be of help.
Yes.
We must look, and speaking for myself, I will entertain any reasonable proposal in terms of the budget discussion that would contribute towards lowering the price of commodities.
Yes.
But we will not be subject and we will not be tied to cheap populism, because cheap populism will not take us anywhere. We must focus on issues such as reducing the fuel prices. We must focus on issues such as subsidies, because most governments subsidize, especially the farmers, to lower the cost of production. For us, the cost of the things we produce to be competitive, such as to be consumed locally and even internationally, then the government must sometimes think about how to subsidize, whether it's the fertilizer subsidy, whether it's the seed subsidy, or whatever else it is. We must consider what measures in terms of policy or even legislation that we can put in place. And we must have that debate honestly, knowing that in truth, this is not an incident that happened last week or 1 month. It has been steady. It has been steadily rising. The cost of commodities in this country has been rising steadily. So let us reason together. Let us think of what we can do to shield the common mwananchi. But let us not try to bring cheap populism, because if you do, it will backfire. Those who are bringing cheap populism must be reminded that in truth and in law and in fact, the Jubilee administration is an administration that was elected jointly between the president and the deputy president. This thing of trying to blame the president for every failure and take credit for every success is something that must stop.
Let me ask Aaron Cheriot, because I think this particular debate of the soaring prices and the high cost of living, is it being steamrolled with right now, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi? Because I know also within ANC we have Honorable Bunyasi Sakwa, who has he has a bill in Parliament. Because it seems he is very particularly intent on making sure that his agenda is pushing the economy and the revival of the economy.
You see, I wish my good friend Otiende was a bit fairer to the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. In all fairness, if we were to set aside our political shade and skin, the one gentleman who has been very consistent about this issue, about the cost of living, public debt, and all these issues across the political divide, from his days in NASA, the handshake season, and even now, is the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. There is no debate, there cannot be debate about that. And consistently, if you watch through his press conferences and the things that he said, forget about the things sometimes that, the positions that sometimes his party has taken in Parliament, but he has been consistent about this particular topic and the things that we need to do, that we need to reduce, number one, our fiscal deficit over the years during our budgeting season, because we are running a fiscal deficit that is not sustainable, each of our budgeting cycle, and it's increasing. Over the years it began with 100 billion, and people would say, okay, that's fair enough, it's something that you can borrow. But now we are getting to levels where, even like in the current financial year, you have a fiscal deficit of close to 650 billion. And what is being proposed for the next financial year is something over 800 billion Kenya shillings. That's almost $1 trillion. That's completely unsustainable. It's not something that you want to speak about as a country. One of the things that we must do is fiscal consolidation and ensure that we basically live within our means. That which we cannot afford, let's forget about it for now, because it's there's no difference between a country's budget and your own personal budget, Dibal. What you do with your salary, you ensure that you live within a house that you can afford. You keep your lifestyle, what you eat, what you wear, where your children go to school, within what you can afford. But basically what the country has been doing is living beyond their own means. Yes. And that particular bad habit is catching up with us now, because we are being pressed by debt on every particular end, with no new source of revenue for the government to be able to pay up most of this debt. And that is what has brought us to this particular situation where we are in. The reason why, for example, you hear everybody understands, and if you're a farmer of whatever shade, I don't know if any of the gentlemen on this table are farmers, even if it's just chicken that you keep in your backyard, back in the village, 5, 10 or 20, you'd know that even the cost of chicken feed has more than tripled in the last 2 or 3 years. Yet the bulk of that cost, if you speak to the animal feed manufacturers, is a good chunk of it is taxes, you know, and taxes that they pay on VAT, excise duty that they pay on many of the inputs, and finally, even taxes that they pay on electricity, you know, and what they use to manufacture, whether they use fossil fuel or power from Kenya Power. It all contributes. If we don't have a honest conversation about how we reduce those particular costs, it passes on. That's why for us to produce a single egg here in Kenya, it costs close to 7 to 8 Kenya shillings, while in Uganda, they are doing it at 4 to 5 shillings. That's why our farmers cannot compete with egg that is brought all the way from Gulu in Uganda. Because by the time it reaches our border, that's a time now. It is, once you have factored in, inclusive of a cost of transport, is what now becomes the average price of what it takes to produce in a farm in many of our villages. So unless we are intentional about it and speak and say, what do we do so that we reduce the heavy tax burden? But on one hand, you want to reduce the tax burden, but you have this debt that is looking at you. And there's no other source, there's no other printing machine that the government can get its revenue to clear off our debt. It has to be these same taxes. So we are in a catch-22 situation. We know what needs to be done. Unfortunately, we cannot do it so long as we have this huge debt stockpile that continues to look upon us. By the way, one of the things that the next administration will struggle with, and they'll have to do for the first 6 months, if they intend to do anything meaningful. And I've seen people go out on the campaign trail and try and campaign projects. I see that a lot being said by the Azimio La Umoja team, that, oh, we'll come and build this and build that, build this particular road. The challenge that we keep posing to them is from where? From which resources? Yet we are a cash-strapped economy right now. We cannot raise even salaries. Forget about money for projects. You saw the billboards that were going up on various roads. I think Thika Road and part of Westlands. I think there was one even on the streets here. Police officers are demanding their salary using banners. That's how broke we are as a country. Therefore, for the next administration, one of the quick things that they must immediately embark on is a debt repayment negotiation with all the people that we owe all this monies. At least we might negotiate perhaps for a moratorium of a certain period, reduce, expand on the period, and stop borrowing, especially the huge commercial loans that are fairly expensive to us as a country.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dan Mazo here briefly.
Unfortunately, most of the borrowed money has been stolen. And that's why you had the President Uhuru Kenyatta say that Kenya loses 2 billion shillings on corruption every day. I think we must really check on the cartels, because there are very many cartels in government, and make sure that a lot of borrowed money and a lot of Kenyan money does not end up in personal pockets. And that's why we are really having a problem. I think the biggest issue is corruption in this country. We must really invest in the fight of corruption, and also the people who don't pay taxes. There are very many people running away. Many big-time companies running in Kenya, and they are not paying taxes, and you find that the public coffers are empty. So I think with those two, Kenya can move forward.
With those two, many can move forward. And of course, what you can see also is Business Daily there. How Russia-Ukraine row will hurt Kenyans at home is another story that you want to follow as well. Energy CS Juma quits arrests for top London job is another story also in the Business Daily this morning. Right, I want just to move on to Daily Nation and what is on the front page of the Daily Nation as well. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Daily Nation. This should maybe tell us more, if we just have it back there. The indecisive kingmaker. And this is Kalonzo Musyoka. They're saying that all eyes on him he has quoted, negotiated and consulted for months on end, leading his political suitors down a never-ending game of cat and mouse and generally playing hard to get. But for how long can Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, who is estimated to be worth 2.1 million votes this year, keep raising the stakes? This is a probing question. You have the story well fleshed out for you on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. And we want to also just briefly hear from Dan Mazu here. We've seen he's actually on the ground as well. We'll just play that clip much later in the course of a program that right now is warming up towards a coalition. Before he said, and I'll whip up that particular statement, that I will never, ever, work with Right Honorable Raila Odinga because this is his time and he's going full throttle, for the presidency, briefly.
Yes, you saw that when the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and the OCA team planned a tour of the coast. Our good friends, ODM, immediately also planned a tour, and coincidentally, the two parties almost met while having breakfast in a hotel in Mombasa. But if you look at the strength of the two of the rallies running in the coast, they are of equal measure of numbers. You can see the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and OCA have a big rally as big as the one ODM is making, if not bigger. And that tells you that OCA is quite a strength in the nation. And Kenyans are really looking forward into coalition making, and time for coalition is not over.
Yes.
There's enough time, by the time we have presidential candidates do their final returns, which we have even up to 30th May. I believe even the deadline for coalitions in April. By that time, there will be way forward. One of the things we are looking forward in the coalition negotiations with Azimio, why not President Uhuru Kenyatta retires with Honorable Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka runs with Otiende Omolo as a running mate? I mean, it is one of the things which can happen, and we are looking forward to the Honorable Raila Odinga this time.
Be careful you don't get Otiende being in the same spot with Jimmy Wanjigi.
So we are looking forward also to Raila Odinga saying Kalonzo Musyoka tosha. Why not? And if not so, OCA can also go all the way. And I believe every day we are gaining, and we are quite a force in the country. So I believe even the Honorable Raila Odinga, according to our agreement of 2017, he can also easily say Kalonzo Musyoka tosha, and the Charioti and company will be home very fast in the morning. And I'm sure you will also even support that. You say, you see, one of the things which has been happening, the team of UDA is saying, they rather have anybody else president, but not Raila Odinga. Right. And Raila Odinga camp, we say, we rather have anybody else as president, but not Ruto. So right. Who is left in the middle? Okay. The Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, the peacemaker.
The peacemaker.
Yes.
So this is what he says. I don't see any person, if you may just pick it up quickly, I don't see any person convincing me to support him. I'd rather go back to Sikeru than support Seikuru, sorry there, than support him again. At the age of 68, this is my moment. I must run. If I don't, when will I? Do you think he's just bound up himself by this statement? That if he goes now, the true watermelon characterization will really come to bear. That will be a consummation.
I don't think the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, first of all, is indecisive. He's a very decisive man. And a lot of people have misunderstood him when he tries to balance all views. And you see, this was a character you found with Honorable Mike Kibaki. Honorable Mike Kibaki never fought with anyone. Everybody's opinion counted, and everybody's vote counted, and that's why he accommodated all sides. And I think it's a character of great men, and that's why the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka loves all people and loves all ideas, good ideas who can build the nation. First of all, we are looking forward into a coalition. When we are making a coalition, that's why we have said, this time round, why not Raila Odinga say Kalonzo Musyoka tosha? Both of them will form a government, and I'm sure the Honorable Raila Odinga will be very much part of that government and its operations. So there's nothing wrong with that particular statement, and I believe he should live into that statement all the way to the end.
Honorable Tiende, Kalonzo Musyoka thinks that Right Honorable Raila Odinga is not an honest man. And just look at this particular statement from him as well. He says, in talks, I will face everybody if it is Mr. Odinga. And I will ask KANU Chairman Gideon Moi to witness the talks, since he is an honest man. To witness. Right. Of course, in legal parlance, a witness is a very... So it means that even if there's standing, there has to be a witness there. And the person that he can trust is Gideon Moi, not Right Honorable Raila Odinga.
Well, I think, Dibal, that's an unjustified conclusion to that statement.
But this is...
that statement does not go there. It only, there's nowhere it imputes that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is dishonest. It only says
but
he wants a witness who is honest. And in his view, the witness who is honest is Honorable Gideon Moi. He didn't mention...
But why will he bring such a statement?
Honorable Dan Mahanzo as a witness. I don't know why. So you can't say that because he didn't mention Dan Mahanzo is dishonest. That would be an
where is this
unfair
statement
conclusion.
really coming from?
So let me... So let's just say...
interpretation is right.
It is right.
He can...
Okay,
Aaron
qualify that.
Can say that,
I'm just
but don't call it an interpretation from this statement. Say it is your own statement, then we can examine yours. But as long as we're examining the right of Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, let us put it as he has put it. All he's saying, and in fact, I think that is the answer to this whole thing. If you look at this story on page 4, the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka made two statements. He made one earlier that he would not back Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. But subsequently, he made a more categorical one, that the one person he would certainly not join is the DP William Ruto, and that's what's repeated on page 4.
Yeah. If I may just
and as the analysis there correctly observes, that leaves him with only two options, either to join Azimio or go all the way. That is the context of all this. But if you look at what he says, even I listened to him when he was in Mombasa, and even what's reported here, you see that he's not categorical about going all the way. He's categorical about having a structured negotiation with Azimio. And it is done in that context that he makes this statement, that he will have a negotiation that is not as secretive as the one Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula had with William Ruto. He will have one with Raila Odinga where there's a witness who then can tell the world that this is what was agreed. And there's nothing wrong with that. But let me come back to the basics. First, I think that my friend Dan Mahanzo sometimes sees things differently. That he saw the crowds that the Azimio party had pulled, and to his mind, they were equal or smaller than the ones that, the Kalonzo Musyoka and the other team had pulled. And of course, I mean, let's not debate that, but that is not true. It can never be true. It is not factually true, but we don't need to spend too much debating that. Because in my view, there is absolutely nothing wrong with anyone or any team or coalition campaigning anywhere, even if they crisscross, provided there is no violence. I remember the kind of campaigns that I love, and we used to have this in my constituency, is where people actually crisscross, and even when you meet your opponent, you actually exchange pleasantries, and then you continue with your campaign as they continue with theirs, as long as there's no violence. That is to be encouraged. But the one thing that I said here last week, and I repeat, I think that the best bet of Senior Counsel, the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, is to cast his lot with Azimio. Because if he doesn't, he could have the option of continuing up to the ballot. He could have this thing that Manzo is calling being a peacemaker. He could have this thing of saying, oh, so many people hate Raila, so many people hate Ruto, therefore they might love me. It doesn't work that way. He tried it in 2007, it didn't work. That's why he gained the reputation of not being decisive. And at that time, he then pitiad katikati, so to speak. You know, he quickly cast his lot with President Kibaki at a time everyone knew that those elections were lacking in integrity.
Yes.
Now, you cannot always be so lucky. And in this election, there's nothing like pitiaring katikati. You must just make up your mind. You're either this side or you are this side. And unfortunately, while Dan Manzo says there's time, there is no time. The Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and the team must just make up their mind. Because there's no time. You can't say that, you know, you can even have an agreement as far as May, or when you know that the party primaries are supposed to be more or less finalized around March, latest April. And when you know that in terms of coalitions, each coalition, and given the amendments to the Political Parties Act we had passed, each coalition will be very keen in terms of mapping out its region and mapping out how to do, in some instances, joint primaries. How would you then come if, for example, Azimio has already mapped up the whole country, has done its joint primaries, then you now want to get into an agreement when now there are candidates all over? It will be impractical. That's why I think the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka should not listen to my friend Dan Manzo, because Manzo and his friends might be misleading him, that don't worry, there's time, we can go up to May. There is no time. And every day that the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka is postponing a decision on this is every day he is empowering alternative leadership in Ukambani. He is empowering the 3 governors who are already having a very significant following to start seeing that kumbe, these people are the ones who can make up their mind and not the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. So I want to say, and I want to advise him, despite the advice he gets from my friend Dan Manzo, that first, there is no time. Secondly, the best bet, and it might be that one is looking, he might be looking that, now if I join the Azimio, what's in it for me? Let me assure him, as we assure everyone else, that we had promised that although the BBI initiative died as stillbirth, it is still under consideration right now at the Supreme Court, and some of the good elements, including some of the structures we intended to create, are structures that will be created immediately Raila Amolo Odinga is sworn in as president. We will restart that debate with everything that comes in it. So there's enough in terms of understanding and in terms of empowering everyone in the next dispensation. So he should not fear. He should just come, and they should all come, and we join Azimio, we take this country. Lastly, the other discussion which we didn't come into, you didn't give me the opportunity. When Aaron Cheruiyot says that he, as people in Azimio are promising that they will be doing this, they'll give money, it's exactly what Dan Manzo said, and I agree with him. There's enough money in this country if you can just control corruption. Now, corruption is something we talk about all the time in Azimio, but our opposite number, it's anathema to even mention that word, corruption. So with controlling corruption and rationalization and negotiation, we will be able to control all these things, including food prices, including the infrastructure that we need.
Right, thank you. Dan Mazo, first of all, you need to actually defend yourself that you have been misleading Kalonzo Musyoka, and of course you are making it still bad his time, thinking that he's got all the time in the world, and the clock is ticking truly. So this hard stands, because we know there's some section of the Wiper Party, members of parliament who are the hardliners. It's not even Kalonzo Musyoka himself who is the hardliner. Could you be one of them, right? Some of them they cannot be mentioned on air, right now, but you know them as well, right? 3 of you have been very, very strongly, drawing that particular demarcation line that he cannot really cross. So you're actually making him be on a very, a very tricky situation, so to speak, a ticklish one for that matter. So here he's caught up, and there's a very interesting editorial cartoon today also in the Star. If we may just pick it up so that we can see. This is President Uhuru Kenyatta trying to woo also Kalonzo Musyoka right now, right? It seems to be actually the person who has the currency, the wild card, with the swing vote. Now we've just been given that figure that he is worth how many votes? 2.1 million votes. That has gone an inch up since now 2017.
Yes, Wiper Party is not just in Lower Eastern. It is also in the whole country. You know, we have the MP for Kisauni, who Ali Bongo, who wants even to become governor, is a member of parliament through Wiper, and quite a number of Wiper MPs in the coastal region, and even in Kisii. And therefore, we will rate our votes 3.2 million, thereabout, and having that sort of number, it means there is every possibility to increase it. And currently, you know, we've lost elections twice. You know, we have supported Honorable Raila Odinga for 10 years. And as much as he's one of the leading candidates, the truth of the matter is we don't just want to join Azimio, and then having joined Azimio, we lose an election again. The truth of the matter is, unless something is done in Central Province, and if the election were to be conducted today, UDA will win the elections. And therefore, the person who can really be trusted by Central Province, which is 4 million, 5 million, 6 million plus votes, is the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, if you look at the three. And therefore, if anything were to be done in Central Province, and I've really been waiting for that moment, and I believe after the meeting tomorrow of President Uhuru Kenyatta, he is able to penetrate or to recapture Central Province, then that will give some hope. But up to today, Central Province, if the election were to happen today, unfortunately, William Samoei Ruto with his UDA will capture quite a large number of votes. So if you map out the country, you realize that even if we joined Azimio, there is every possibility of losing. And therefore, if by the time we come together, we want to make sure that we are in a winning team. We don't want to lose. And for the three governors, I can assure you they are totally inconsequential in Ukambani. Mutua is on his way out. Kivuza Kibwana is on his way out and is not controlling anyone in Makueni. The Honorable Charity Gilu has already lost Kitui governorship.
So we need Aaron Cheriot, are you guys really warming up to some people?
I want to make
you guys before we had a conversation. But before we take a short break, I just want to bring this up and maybe you can comment on this as well. Yeah. What Kalonzo was saying, harking back to what Otende actually had told us about Kalonzo. If we just bring up that particular statement, he said it will be unthinkable to support Mr. Odinga for the third time. I'll be the most stupid person to once again support his bid without a measure of reciprocity. We'll take a short break right now. We'll circle back with more.
I'll come back.
Yes, Aaron Cheriot will tackle that. Don't go away, you're watching Siasa Fiesta. Siasa Fiesta.